dear brothers and sisters in Islam, today I want to talk to you about one hadith, a single tradition of our beloved Prophet alayhi salatu wassalam. And the thing about the hadith, the words of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, is that they were very comprehensive in nature. And the Prophet ﷺ was gifted the ability to say a lot in a few words. And this particular hadith, not only is it very powerful, but it serves as a true dichotomy between hope and fear. And honestly, when I read the hadith, I get a little nervous. I'm nervous right now just thinking about it. It's reported by Imam Ahmad and Muslim, Imam Abu Dawood, and other collectors of hadith. عن أبي هريرة رضي الله عنه أن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم قال من دعا إلى هدى كان له من الأجر مثل أجور من تبعه لا ينقص ذلك من أجورهم شيئا. This is the first part of the hadith. The Prophet said, whoever invites to guidance, man da'a, whoever invites or calls, gives da'wah to guidance, will be rewarded the reward of whoever follows it without detracting a thing from them, meaning detracting from those that embrace guidance, that embrace Islam. Essentially, if you are the cause of someone accepting truth, changing their life for the better, then the reward is equivalent to whatever it is they do. Their beliefs that are changed, their attitude, their actions. You know, if you invite someone to prayer and they start living a life of prayer, if they embrace prayer and they're steadfast with it, well, because you were the cause of them returning to prayer, essentially what this means is that you will be rewarded for their prayers without detracting from the reward they get from those prayers. Opportunity is huge. We're not just talking about prayer, but it's anything. Any act of righteousness, any sound belief that can be held in the heart, any attitude, mannerism, etc. All of those things that are of merit in Islam, if you are the cause of someone coming to that and embracing it, then you will share in the reward. This is from the bounty and the favor of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So last week, if you remember, if you were here, I told you the stories, some in more detail than others, of 20 of the earliest converts or reverts to Islam. We talked about Khadija, Ali, Zayd, Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, Khalid ibn Sa'id, Uthman ibn Affan, Abdurrahman ibn Auf, and many more, radiyallahu anhum. We talked about those stories and how they embraced faith, what led them up to accepting Islam, what led them up to the moment of saying, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah. And the stories of embracing faith, those new Muslims, they went on to be the champions of Islam. They went on to champion Allah's religion, the Prophet's mission. The early converts to Islam, they lived and they died for the sake of spreading our faith. Think about all they did. Some of you are familiar with a couple of those companions. Just think about one or two incidents in your mind. Some of the sacrifices that were made by Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, for example. His role in the migration, I'll give you one if you can't think of anything. His role in the migration from Mecca to Al-Madinah to find a safe haven for the people of faith. He played an integral role. Supplied the Prophet ﷺ, helped pack, helped get ready. His family was involved with it, his children, sons and daughters alike. Think about the wealth that he donated and gave to the Prophet ﷺ, emptying his pockets multiple times. Here's everything I have, and I've left my family with Allah and His Messenger. Think about those types of incidents and opportunities that they took advantage of. The significance of their efforts, the efforts of the early converts, the companions of the Prophet ﷺ, will forever go unmatched. They will forever go unmatched, because during that time it's all about delivering what is absolutely needed at the right time. And that's how you make your contribution impactful. That you give it when it's needed. You make it when it's necessary. You don't delay, you don't wait, you don't put it off when the need's gone, and then you show up a day late or a dollar short, and it's already over and it's already been filled. But the companions were right there making sure the needs of the message were being met. Because of that, Imam Ahmad reports in his collection of hadith, the Prophet ﷺ, he said, "La tasubbu ashabi." Do not curse my companions. فَوَالَّذِي نَفْسِي بِيَدِي لَوْ أَنَّ أَحَدَكُمْ أَنفَقَ مِثْلَ أُحْدٍ ذَهَبًا مَا أَدْرَكَ مُدَّ أَحَدِهِمْ وَلَا نَصِيفًا. He said, by the one in whose hand is my soul, swearing by Allah, if one of you were to spend the amount of Uhud in gold, if one of you were to spend the amount of Uhud in gold. Uhud is a mountain, a very famous mountain in Al-Madinah. Uhud dominates the skyline. Much like, if you look to the city, it's the buildings that dominate the skyline. Just look up there and you see this, beautiful sight of glass and steel. Well, in Medina, it's the mountain of Uhud. Wherever you are in the city, if you want to know where you are, you just look around and find Mount Uhud and you'll have your bearings. That's how large it is. Mount Uhud is 4 miles long. And it's 1.5 miles wide. It's 3,500 feet tall. What does it mean when the Prophet ﷺ says that if you were to spend a mountain of Uhud in gold? What does that actually mean? Well, it means a lot. But because in our day and age, we tend to measure things in dollars and cents. We almost measure everything in dollars and cents. I want to help you picture that. It's almost unimaginable, actually, when you actually drill down the numbers. Mountain of Uhud is estimated to be 1 billion cubic yards of rock and dirt. 1 billion cubic yards. If you've ever worked out in the lawn, in your own gardens, if you do landscaping, you know that's heavy stuff. A cubic yard of dirt and rock equals 1.3 tons. 1.3 tons. So Mount Uhud weighs 1.3 billion tons. Today's cash value of gold is $45 million a ton. Today, as of today, the cash value of gold is roughly $45 million a ton. We're talking about 1.3 billion tons of $45 million. I had to look it up, actually. What is after a million? We know a billion. What's after a billion? Most of us know it's a trillion. After that, I had no idea. What comes after a trillion? It's a quadrillion. It's $5.85 quadrillion if you were to give the weight of Uhud in gold. $5.85 quadrillion. You know that there is only 166,000 tons of mined gold on earth, that's only $7.5 trillion. The earth, the gold that has been mined is only $7.5 trillion. The reward, if you will, of spending, as was mentioned by the Prophet ﷺ, the weight of Uhud in gold is 5.85 quadrillion. It's thousands of times more. And so it's no wonder that you find the Prophet ﷺ say in another hadith reported by Imam al-Bukhari, he says, فَوَاللَّهِ بِأَنْ يُهْدَى بِكَ رَجُلٌ وَاحِدٌ خَيْرٌ لَكَ مِنْ حُمُرِ النِّعَمِ. He says that if you were to be the cause of one person's guidance, it would be better for you than the best camels. That doesn't mean much to us. In another narration, however, it says, خَيْرٌ لَكَ مِمَّا طَلَعَتْ عَلَيْهِ الشَّمْسُ وَغَرَبَتْ. Better for you than what the sun rises and sets over. Meaning it will be better for you. Look here, not equal, but better than all of the world and everything that it contains. All of the mined gold and all of the unmined, all of the riches, all of the rubies and pearls and sapphires and whatever. The dollars and the rupees, whatever you want to think about. Guidance is priceless. And to be a part of that process is to receive a priceless reward. Think about this for a minute. We've been talking about the Prophet ﷺ for a number of months, looking at his life. The Prophet ﷺ, because he was the source or the cause of those early companions' guidance, today's hadith would indicate that he will share in the reward of his companions. You know, the Prophet ﷺ, to conclude that hadith about spending in the weight or spending gold, the weight of Uhud, the Prophet ﷺ, he says, "Ma adraka mudda ahadihim wala nasifa." That if you were to spend that amount, $5.85 quadrillion, it would not be equivalent to a handful of what the companions gave. A handful of what they gave. And so the Prophet ﷺ, because he was a part of the process of guidance, all of that reward will be his as well, along with his companions. And it's not only that, the generation of the companions that he was responsible for, but it's everything they did. All of the lives that they touched after he, alayhi salatu wasalam, passed away. Everyone that embraced Islam after that, and all of their efforts, all of their righteousness, and so on and so forth. Brothers and sisters, outreach is one of the best and most rewarding actions that we can do. Outreach. Reaching out to people around us, sharing the message of Islam, sharing the truth. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَمَنْ أَحْسَنُ قَوْلًا مِمَّنْ دَعَا إِلَى اللَّهِ وَعَمِلَ الصَّالِحًا وَقَالَ إِنَّنِي مِنَ الْمُسْلِمِينَ. And who is better in speech than one who invites to Allah and does righteous good deeds and says, indeed, I am of the Muslims. Last week after prayer, after we talked about those 20 stories of conversion, we were blessed to be a part of the process. This is from the mercy of Allah. Blessed as a community to be a part of the process of guidance. We had 2 people join our community and embrace Islam. If you remember, do you remember their names? We had 2 people, one person stand over here on the men's side and one on the women's side, Sharif and Hadia. They joined us in faith, and we were there. And a third lady said she was going to make a commitment this very week today. And we hope that comes true by the time we finish our prayers today. That's from your efforts. That's your efforts. I had no idea who Sharif was and Hadia. Never met them, never seen them. 5 minutes before I stood up here in front of you last week. That was the fruit of your efforts as a community. It means that some of you are ready to stand out for the truth. You are standing out. You are making the right decisions in your community. and sharing with others. And if we can all muster up the courage to stand out, well, you could imagine that, on average, it's like one person visits us a month and they accept Islam. That's about average. Imagine if we were all engaging the community. We were all interested in that reward the Prophet ﷺ mentioned. If we can do that, we can certainly begin to change the world around us. So I ask that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward you for your efforts to give you the best in this life and in the next, and to guide you and your families to His guidance. وصلى الله وسلم على نبينا محمد. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم ولسائر المسلمين من كل ذنب فاستغفروه إنه هو الغفور الرحيم. بسم الله والحمد لله حمدا كثيرا طيبا مباركا فيه كما يحب ربنا ويرضى ونصلي ونسلم على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه ومن تبعهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين وبعد اتقوا الله حق التقوى. My dear brothers and sisters, the first part, I told you one hadith, that's what I want to highlight. I want to highlight one single hadith, and I did the first half. The first half of it is very hopeful. It's very encouraging. It's inspiring, in fact. If you're not engaged in dawah, outreach, mission work, when you hear that hadith, something should stir inside of you and push you forward and say, look, I need to talk to my family. That's the place you start, by the way. You don't need to take off work for a week or 2 or 3 or a month or 40 days or 6, whatever, and then go across the globe. You start right at home. You start right at home, and that was the method of the Prophet ﷺ. If you remember, he started at home. He started with his family. He started with his wife. He started with his cousins. He started with his neighbors. He started with his clan. He started with his community, and then the message began to spread. That hadith should start pushing you, say, look, we need to start a program at home. Let's start a program of inviting one another to righteousness, reminding each other of the goodness that we can find in Islam. Second part of the hadith, this is where the fear sets in, the worry and the anxiety. The Prophet ﷺ concluded that hadith and he says, وَمَنْ دَعَ إِلَى ضَلَالَةٍ, that whoever invites others to misguidance, whoever calls people to misguidance, كَانَ عَلَيْهِ مِنَ الْإِثْمِ مِثْلُ آثَامِ مَنْ تَبِعَ. He says that he will be rewarded the sin of whoever follows it. لا ينقص ذلك من آثامهم شيئا, without detracting from their sin in the slightest. So the opposite is true. You call people to good, you get good. You call people and invite people to misguidance and sin and transgression, then you will be rewarded in a similar fashion. Brothers and sisters, while we're trying to engage society in the manner that they understand, we have to engage our community in a manner they understand. We have to talk their language. We have to use what's familiar. But we have to be surgical in how we go about it. We have to be surgical. And medical professionals know that surgery, it's about accuracy. You know, the incision a little off this way or that way, it could be the difference between life and death. And the thing about dawah, the thing about outreach and spreading Islam, it's not about life and death, it's about salvation or damnation. So, for that reason, we have to be surgical in how we engage our communities and how we invite them to Islam. I'll give you an example. I want to draw your attention to the example of the Prophet ﷺ. So, you should remember a couple of weeks ago when the Prophet ﷺ, he climbed onto the Mount of Safa and he began to call out. And he gathered his community. He said, "Wa sabaha." This is a phrase that was very well known to the Arab. And it was something that was said during the times of ignorance, obviously before Islam. And when you said that, you were calling people's attention to an alert, to warn them. And that's what the Prophet ﷺ did. That's what he ﷺ did. The only thing about that phrase, wal sabaha, is that it was coupled with the person calling it taking all their clothes off and then throwing dirt on themselves. It's like shock and awe. You start making an audible call to everyone. You take your clothes off. You throw dirt on yourself. It's like we're in a crisis. This is a panic. Everyone look. Everyone pay attention. Stop what you're doing. That's how they used to use wal sabaha. How did the Prophet ﷺ employ that language? To engage his community in a manner that they understood. He spoke their language. He knew their culture. He tried to make things familiar so it would be easy to answer the invitation. That's right. That's a tactic. You have to consider people's culture and what is normal and what they're used to. But the Prophet ﷺ didn't disrobe. He didn't take his clothes off. He didn't shower himself with dirt and rocks. He stayed clothed and dignified. He went as far as he could. He went as far as he could. Brothers and sisters, we must stick to our own standards as people of faith. We have standards. We have morals. They're defined by our faith. And if we don't, we run the risk of calling people to misguidance. If we don't stick to our standards, we run the risk of calling and inviting others to misguidance and to sin. What we say and how we convey it must always be measured by our authentic tradition. And that requires a couple of things. Number one is knowing how. As people of faith, we're representatives of our Prophet ﷺ. We need to take our religious education seriously. We need to take our religious education seriously. We take our worldly education very serious. It's on our resumes. We're proud of that. Are you a college graduate? Did you go to grad school? Do you have special training and certification? Are you continuing to develop yourself to this very day? Some of us, we can't get enough of knowledge. We can't get enough of developing and learning our trade, becoming masters in what it is that we have a passion for, what it is that we do. And then we have our hobbies that we're also very, very skilled at. Because what? Because we learn. We continuously learn. So where is your religious education right now? Is it Sunday school? And I'm talking to the adults. Was it Sunday school or madrasa or wherever you came from? Is that the extent of your religious training, that you were a kid and you went through madrasa, you went through Sunday school, and then when you graduated, ala barakatillah, no more continuing education and development? How are you going to engage people? You have to be equipped, not only with the information, but with the know-how. How do you deliver that message? Which leads me to the next point. And that is, I don't know. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with saying, I don't know. In fact, that's you sliding into home base. That's being safe and not you're out. Saying, I don't know. When you don't know or you're uncertain, you should never feel obliged to guess or to make something up. And number three is if you're shy to speak the truth, it's better to stay quiet than to change the truth to accommodate others. If you're personally uncomfortable with certain topics of faith, and we know there are many topics that, not an abundant amount, I should say, there are a handful of topics that people like to utilize to try and put us in a corner. About hijab, for example, about, men versus women, one wearing hijab, one not. About the Prophet ﷺ and his marriages, about marriage in Islam in general. Different topics, they come up and they use those sometimes to put you in a corner. If you're uncomfortable with those topics, well, honestly, they're very easy topics to address. If you're equipped, you can quickly turn the argument around. If you don't know how to do that, it's best to be quiet about those uncomfortable topics. Don't adulterate the message of Islam by adding your base interpretation to it to accommodate the standards of this culture. No, you have standards. They're the standards of the Prophet ﷺ. Do you want to make your Prophet look bad by being accommodating to that degree? No, of course not. You love your Prophet ﷺ. Brothers and sisters, we cannot try and mold Islam to fit into the lives of others by tweaking and changing constantly, but we have to help people transform their lives into a mold which is befitting for a person of faith. And that requires that we deliver the message as commanded. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, فَاصْدَعْ بِمَا تُؤْمَرْ وَأَعْرِضْ عَنِ الْمُشْرِكِينَ. Says, then declare what you are commanded and turn away from the polytheists. Meaning, give the message as it is and turn away from them when they begin to ridicule or they mock. They laugh and they joke. Turn away from them at that point. Give the clear message and don't think twice about what it is that they may have to say. Brothers and sisters, if we lose our nerve and we buckle under the pressure, societal pressure for these types of issues, always accommodating, ending up changing our faith, it will be the latter part of the hadith that we'll have to deal with. That latter part of calling to misguidance, we'll have to deal with that. And it won't be the former part. It won't be the hopeful part. So I hope that you'll keep that in mind as you're engaging the people around you, as you're inviting them to Islam, as you're hoping to see another smiling face standing in front of us, inshallah, in the coming weeks. So we ask that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guide you, to bless you, to give health to those of us that are ill, and to give strength to those of us that are weak, and to free those of us that are shackled with financial bonds. وصلى الله وسلم على نبينا محمد وآخر دعوانا الحمد لله رب العالمين.